The Burning Crusade pre-patch is finally live, and with it brings so many new things. There is massive changes and talents for literally every class. Horde can now be paladins, and Alliance can now be shamans. And of course, there is two brand new races to level, Draenei for the Alliance and Blood Elves for the Horde. And you too can skip 80% of the fun with Blizzard's all new level 58 character boost. And admittedly, I was supposed to be transferring our shaman over to Classic Era and finishing his journey there. However, I may have forgotten to do that. So looks like Hairy Orc Toes will be coming along with us to Outland. So like I said in the intro to the video, I completely forgot to transfer Hairy Orc Toes to Classic Era. And to be honest, I'm kinda glad that I did, because I was so excited to log on and check out the class changes. And to be fair, we have done quite a lot with this character. We started as enhancement, one-shotting everything in sight. Then we did a little bit of resto in dungeons, and then we switched over to elemental and one-shot everything in sight. But with the pre-patch now here, we are actually going back to enhancement, because we now get access to dual wielding. So first off, I made a quick stop at the shaman trainer and reset all of my talents. And using just a guide that I found on Google, I applied all of the new talents for dual wielding. Now of course last time we were playing elemental, so I needed to upgrade my gear a bit. So I spent the next 15 minutes scouring the auction house looking for strength gear. And of course, how could we forget about the fiery weapon enchants? Because I honestly think I might have a crippling addiction to wasting all of my money on enchants. But now that we are fully prepared and ready, I decided to purchase myself a bird over to Tanaris. Once landed, I quickly handed in all of the leftover quests from last time and began making my way over to the east to finish up the pirate hat quest. Now of course, since we are brand new to dual wielding, I haven't leveled up the one-handed maces skill at all. So thank you very much to this friendly priest who allowed me to follow behind him and attempt to hit mobs. And since I can't really do anything by myself, I decided to help out this priest with his quest for the next 15 minutes. And eventually, I managed to get the maces skill not max level, but high enough for a run of Zul Farak. So I found myself a group and we got started straight away. And the thing that I immediately noticed is that totems get deployed way quicker. Before, I think it was just timed with your global cooldowns, and most of the time you would spend all of your mana planting your totems, and by the time they were all out, the fight was basically over. Now our tank in this run was a protection paladin, which apparently is quite good now in the pre-patch. And this paladin just put way too much confidence into his consecration because he pulled way too many mobs and we unfortunately wiped. Yeah, not a great start to a dungeon run, but no worry, we rezzed up and continued the run at a much more reasonable pace. Still pretty large pools overall, but at least ones that our healer could heal. Now, Zul'Farrak, we all know it, we all love it. This is truly one of the titans of vanilla dungeons. I personally love everything about it. I've said it quite a few times at this point, but I really like the voodoo troll aesthetic, and I think this dungeon mixes that with the desert really well. As for the loot, well, I did of course take a quick look and there isn't too many things. However, there is a weapon called Ripsaw, and I really wanted to get one, maybe two if I was lucky. And yes, I know that since this is an axe, it kind of erases all of our progress with leveling weapon skill, buying weapons, and then buying enchants for those weapons. But regardless, I still wanted one. So we continued clearing through the dungeon, AoEing down all of the little scarabs along the way until we get to the graveyard area. And since we have a prot paladin, 2 warriors and a shaman, our AoE is pretty huge. So we decided to clear out every single one of the graves just for XP. We then continued our way through the dungeon, doing the little staircase scenario along the way until we get to the final boss of the dungeon, Chief Ukor's Sandscalp, the boss that can drop our Ripsaw. So we DPS him down, and unfortunately he dropped the big bad pauldrons, but congrats to the warriors I guess. Now after we had taken down the last boss, we actually went down towards Gazrilla. Sadly though, no one seemed to have the mallet to spawn him in, but we ended up clearing our way around the entire outside part. Not for any specific reason, I don't think, just for more XP, which I'm not going to say no to, of course. But after our first run and not getting the weapon, I of course decided to go back in for another. And the other thing that I'm noticing is that leveling is a lot quicker. That one run managed to get us an entire level. Vanilla leveling, surely we would need a minimum of 2 of those runs. So just like the last run, this group is being tanked by a protection paladin. And what is with these paladins and just a monkey brain pulling every single mob they see? Does consecration just give people an unending supply of confidence? So we rezzed up, and once again we decided to take on the graveyard just for XP. We then actually went straight past the staircase thingy and went straight to Gazrilla, and completely without warning someone spawned him in. And since I was lazy and didn't grab the quest beforehand, I asked the paladin if he had the quest to share with me, and very luckily he did. So for the next couple of minutes we cleared out all of the surrounding mobs and took the boss in the worst location possible, because this guy hits hard, plus he likes to do that. And to make matters worse, our healer had disconnected, which means it was up to us to spam lesser healing wave on people. But in the end we were able to take him down and get the quest completed. So once again we continued our way through, this time without a healer, but it was okay since myself and the druid were kinda both just popping heals occasionally, and that seemed to be enough to keep everyone alive. So we moved on up to Chief Sandscalp, and big surprise, no Ripsaw. And we actually then backtracked a bit because we had skipped over the boss Antu Sol, and he dropped a weapon, the Hand of Antu Sol, which I completely neglected. I totally forgot this thing existed, and well, it's really good. It's nice and slow, has great DPS, and is quite literally a thunderclap stick. Plus it's a mace, which means I wouldn't have to go through that entire thing of leveling the weapon skills again. So I was really only too happy to need on it. So we made our way out, and of course the first thing I did was travel through these shimmering flats to turn the quest in. And just like that, we had received our first trinket on our Shaman. So with our new weapon in hand, I honestly could not resist at least trying to get another. And well, this run really wasn't anything different from the first few. However, when we got down to the area with Theka the Martyr and the hordes of scarabs, an epic BOE dropped, the Underworld Band. So we all agreed to need on it, and we won it, which honestly is kinda better than any weapon, because this is hopefully some more enchant buying money. So once again we stopped and spent the time to clear out all of the graves, and well, turns out this group were actually planning on just XP grinding the graves, which means they clear to the graveyard, then reset and do it again. And it's great XP, but that's just not really what I was after. So I quickly found myself another group to run it with, and very shortly after starting, the tank pulled badly, causing a few of us to die. The healer then threw a tantrum and left. So once again, I went and found another group to run it with, which just so happens to contain the same healer as before. So we clear our way through very cleanly and take down all of the graves. And once again, they just wanted to spam the graveyard. There was no warning prior that that's what we were doing, otherwise I probably wouldn't have joined. And at this point, I had just kinda given up. So I harped my way back to Orgrimmar and beelined it towards the auction house in order to check the price of this epic ring that we had luckily gotten. And it was just under 100 gold, which is really good. I mean, that's like 12.5 fiery enchants. But now that that was listed on the auction house, I decided that that was enough World of Warcraft for today. Logging on the following day, the first thing I did was rush down to the mailbox and pick up my much needed gold. Also, big thank you to Hovness, who for some reason decided to just empty his bag into my mailbox. I will put that 7 silver worth of greys to good use. And of course, with our newly acquired gold, I just had to put another fiery enchant onto our new Zul'Farrak mace. And since we were just here, I decided to pay a visit to the class trainer. Wasn't anything too massive, just some upgrades to abilities. We got Frost Shock, Chain Lightning, Healing Wave, Magma Totem, load of good stuff. But now that that is all out of the way, it was time for us to find a place to quest for a bit. And looking at the map, I of course wanted to go somewhere with green quests, and I decided on Feralas. So I purchased myself a bird and began flying down towards Desolace. As I was coming into the zone, I stopped by this goblin NPC to grab his couple of quests. Didn't stop to do them because I decided to just beeline it towards Camp Moyashe? Fucking that one. Although along the way I did stop to do the Tanara Screecher quest where we've got to collect their spirits. But once I eventually did make it in, I actually grabbed the flight point this time, which is an occasion in itself. I also grabbed every single quest in sight and logged out because I overestimated how much time I had before my Naxxramas raid. But coming back, I wasted zero time and got stuck straight into some questing. And first up was the Gorduni Ogre Kill quest. And holy crap, the damage is ridiculously insane. I definitely didn't notice that much whilst in the dungeon because obviously my main responsibility in that setting is totems. And just because I thought it would be cool, I decided to unboon all of my world buffs that I had passively gathered on my travels. And you know what? I think this was the moment that I truly started to fall in love with Shaman. I felt so powerful, absolutely annihilating every mob in sight. As a support class, you know, Shaman in vanilla was really all about how much damage I could do with a single swing of my axe, but now it feels like an incredibly consistent DPS spec that brings so much utility to a group, and I absolutely love it. So I finished up the ogre killing as well as the wood paw killing, and then made a quick return to camp, whatever it's called, obviously to turn the quests in, but mainly because I had forgotten to pick up water beforehand. So once again, I moved out into the center of the zone for a quick quest where we needed to kill off some sprite darter dragon freaks. I then moved on over to the second Gorduni ogre quest, where I almost immediately got very lucky and another epic BOE dropped. Granted, this one was only 11 gold, but that's not the point. It's still 1.5 fiery enchants. The quest itself is one that I remember all too well. It's not too complicated, we're just slaughtering a few ogres, but for whatever reason, the shamans never want to spawn, and I had to run around for a good 30 minutes before eventually completing the quest. So now that the Gorduni were dead, I moved over to the west for the Yeti Hide quest, and normally there's nothing wrong with this quest, but weirdly, it was extremely contested. I thought I noticed a lack of players in Feralas. Turns out they were all inside here, and I had to spend a good 40 minutes circling this cave over and over and over again. I even tried going outside, but that was kind of discouraging. But nonetheless, I did manage to complete it and then started moving over to the very west coast of the zone, killing these lovely water elementals for their water cores, and of course doing the very strange giant shrinking quest. And I actually struggled to find enough of these giants to complete the quest. I ran all the way up the zone, all the way down again, and yes, I eventually did realize that there's actually more spawns for the giants up north. Plus I had another quest here anyway. Yeah, you know, it's been a while since I had to look at a harpy, and by the way, my hate for these things is mutual, because they killed me and took away the remaining 3 minutes on my world buffs. Not only that, but this was probably the longest corpse run of my entire life. Not that I have to corpse run very often, of course, but I respawned with a smile on my face and finished up the harpy slaughter, before making a return to Camp Thingy to turn in the quests. The second round of quests, there actually wasn't that much left to do, but first off, was the task of killing 5 woodpaw alphas, which was actually a timed quest that I had managed to previously fail. I then went back over to the sprite darter area, where this time we had to kill off Grim Totem Torrens, and ordinarily I 100% would have gone and killed that alliance player, which I definitely contemplated, but I was in a funny mood that day. I then went south a bit to kill some of the fastest moving bugs I have ever seen. There was also a mini boss bug guy that I was supposed to kill, but he had this massive patrol path, and to be honest, I really just didn't want to go chasing after it. And finally was the other Yeti Hide quest, and very strangely, not a single person here. We were entirely alone. Well, except for this level 57 gnome rogue, who was friendly to be fair. He even dragged the mob over for me to kill it. If only he knew of the crimes I have committed against his kind. And so, for the final time, I returned to the horde part of Feralas and handed my quests in. And that was it. Feralas was now completed. Well, not really. We still had a decent amount to do here. However, it is that time again. Time for us to venture into what is possibly the best dungeon in the entire game. So I took a bird back on over to Shadowprey Village and proceeded to grab every single quest for Maraudon. Well, most of them. I then made my way over to the entrance of the dungeon and I patiently waited. and waited. But after 20-ish minutes of waiting, I was eventually able to get us into a group, and whilst I was waiting for everybody to get here, I decided to tackle the little quest outside of the actual dungeon, which was just killing these rock elementals for shadow shard fragments. Sadly though, I was only able to get us into a princess run, which basically means we skip over every boss and mob possible and only target the last boss, Princess Theradras. Now, unlike when we did this on the Hunter, this time these runs are actually really good for us, because just before we started, I googled the enhancement Shaman prebis, and turns out the Blackstone ring is prebis for us. So before we move on to something else, we are 100% getting that ring. And we actually decided as a group to make a quick stop upstairs at Landslide. I assume probably because the paladin tank that was with us wanted that really fast mace. Unlucky for him though, the rock grip gauntlets dropped, which I did actually need on, but to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if they were actually better than my current gloves, which were just plus 12 strength. So we clear our way through the few remaining giant packs and eventually make it down to Princess Theradras, who, to be honest, felt like had been nerfed. She definitely didn't feel as strong as she used to, though that's probably wildly wrong. However, the Blackstone ring did actually drop, and of course we selected need, and then we didn't win. So we made our way out of the dungeon exactly as the devs intended, and unfortunately this group never ended up going back in for another run, and we were so close to level 50 that we might as well say that we were level 50. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. I apologize for the shorter video today. I'll be totally honest, I really underestimated how quick leveling was going to be in the pre-patch, and it kind of messed up the flow of everything. I was also away at the weekend for a Flesh and Blood tournament. I got my shit kicked in, thank you for asking. But with the leveling being so quick, it has allowed me to pre-record quite a lot. So I'm hoping that by the time TBC is out, I will already have another video waiting to go within a few days, which will allow me a good chunk of time to just experience TBC, you know? I'm really excited to log on and see everyone bum rush the Dark Portal, and I know that questing will probably be impossible, but it's all for the experience. And I actually did get offered to join in with a group of my guildies who are pre-questing to 62 and are gonna spam dungeons to 70, but I just want to see the release properly, you know? The other thing is that I finally got a new PC. Finally, I can play games at an FPS higher than 46, so I've also spent the last couple of days setting things up, so I apologize if the mic sounds a bit off. I'm still trying to tinker with all the settings and stuff. Anyway, I think that is enough yapping for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.